Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular council meeting for Tuesday, July 18th. It's currently 7 o'clock. Before I call the meeting to order, I'd like to recognize that the Village of Anmore would like to open our meeting by recognizing the many Indigenous peoples of our area, including the following First Nations, with communities that are located in the region that we now know as Metro Vancouver. They would be the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam. Further, we'd like to honor the important place in history occupied by the many territorial keepers of these lands and waters around us since time immemorial. With that being said, could I get someone, I'll call the meeting to order. Approval of the agenda. Recommendation would read
that the agenda be approved as circulated.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Public input. Public is permitted to provide comments to council on any item shown on this meeting agenda. A 2-minute time limit applies to each speaker. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. So we do have some submissions that were emailed in that Ms. Schell will read momentarily, but I just first wanted to note that as noted on tonight's council meeting agenda, there is a report from ISL Engineering outlining an OCP amendment application that we received from Icona Properties for its Anmore South property. We have noticed already that there's some inaccurate information being posted on social media channels about what this report is about, and we're asking our community to please stay informed by reviewing the source information, not just individual posts on Facebook or other social platforms. We have received a few phone calls today, confusion about where exactly we are in the process of this application review. I spoke to a representative from Mossam Creek Hatchery today who had been led to believe that this process was much further along than it actually is. So as an example, here's some of the clarifications that are important for tonight's meeting. This meeting this evening is a regularly scheduled meeting. It's been on the calendar since November of 2022, which is when we set our calendar for the year. So this is not an out of the normal calendar scheduled meeting. This is not first reading of the proposed OCP amendment bylaw. We are not even close to that point. Tonight's report is letting council know about the amendment application that was submitted by Icona and providing information on what the review process could look like if council wishes to consider this amendment. The village did not initiate this OCP amendment. It was submitted by Icona as the property owner. Information being posted from more than 3 years ago is outdated and does not reflect the current application. The village does not have a position to support or not support the proposed OCP amendment related to Anmore South Special Study Area. An extensive amount of information would be required before council would come to a decision on whether to support this amendment. Tonight's report, prepared by ISL Engineering, outlines what that process could entail. There is a recent Facebook post using quotation marks to cite information about tonight's report that is misleading and inaccurate, as it is not true and not even suggested in the report, let alone something that could be cited as though it is a word-for-word reference. If council chooses to direct staff to start the process to consider this OCP amendment, it will initiate a comprehensive list of requirements that will likely take considerable amount of time before any decisions are made about this amendment, let alone the start of any development of the property, which the proposal suggests would involve a 25-year build-out. ISL's report for tonight's meeting highlights the types of analysis and technical reports that would be required, as well as the considerations and benefits of community engagement. If this does go forward, we will be sharing these reports and other information so that our residents have the facts and can provide informed input and feedback. If this process moves forward, it will be extremely important for our community members to learn about the proposed amendment, review all the various reports, and consider what it means for our community. We also hope that the majority of our residents will get involved in any future community engagement on this topic, and that the community remains respectful where everyone's voice is heard. Thank you. I'll pass it over to Ms. Schell for the submissions.
The first submission is from Lynn Burton. It says, on February 15th, 2022, the Save Anmore Coalition presented a petition from 902 people, 400 Anmore residents, and 502 others, asking for a referendum on council's proposed change in designation for Anmore South from rural to urban to be included with the 2022 municipal election. None was held. 400 signatures from residents is 45% of the 878 people who voted in the 2022 municipal election. In the Anmore South OCP and RGS Amendment Community Engagement conducted for the village by Mickelson Consultants, surveys from 75 people, or 8.5% of 875 voters, were reviewed. The conclusion was the majority of participants in the community engagement for Anmore South do not support moving forward with an urban designation at this time. Perhaps I am being naive, but in my reading of both the community charter and LGA, council accountability to the electorate is paramount, especially when it pertains to big issues such as boundary changes. Clearly, Anmore residents are concerned about the impact that this OCP amendment will have on this little village. Given these concerns, will council hold a referendum to determine community support for the proposed OCP amendment to redesignate Anmore South from rural to urban before first reading as proposed for tonight? Would you like me to continue on to the next one?
Sure.
Okay.
Are they as long, or?
Some.
Okay.
The next one is from Michael and Corrine Robson. It says, we are unable to attend Anmore's RCM this evening, but wish to have placed in the public record that we do not support in any way the Icona Properties OCP amendment application for their properties known as Anmore South. It goes against everything that Metro 2050 is attempting to achieve, places a large population in a remote location with minimal road access, and puts all residents at risk in the event of an emergency evacuation, and is not appropriate for a village with a rural designation. In addition, this proposed application will destroy environmentally sensitive land, including fish habitat, and decimate the local wildlife, which includes species such as the northern red-legged frogs, which are designated as a species of special concern federally. The developer has ample alternatives within Anmore's current zoning bylaws to allow substantial development within a rural context and to achieve their goal of substantial profit within the already existing zoning.
Can I hold you right there? Is there chairs in the back still? Why don't we could move probably about 6 of them right over here and get some of the people in up front, if that would work all right. We'll just move a few chairs over, if that helps.
Jeez.
I think that's good now. There's 3 chairs, empty chairs up front here if somebody wants to move over, and we'll just get everybody in. Okay, we're good? Perfect, good. Okay, please continue, Ms.
Thank you.
Okay, could I have, please? Okay, please continue.
The next submission is from Caress Selk. She says, I wish to have placed in the public record that I do not support the Icona Properties OCP amendment application for their properties known as Anmore South. This development is not consistent with the goals identified in Metro 2050, including containing growth within the urban containment boundary, focusing growth in transit-oriented urban centers, addressing climate change, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The next submission is from Carolyn Simpson. It states, I wish to have placed in the public record that I do not support in any way the Icona Properties OCP amendment application for their properties known as Anmore South. It goes against everything that Metro 2050 is attempting to achieve, placing a large population in a remote location with minimal road access and only a local bus. The developer has ample opportunities within Anmore's current zoning bylaws to allow substantial development and a substantial profit. The next submission is from Jill Campbell. It states, I wish to have placed in the public record that I do not support in any way the Icona Properties OCP amendment application for their properties known as Anmore South. It goes against everything that Metro 2050 is attempting to achieve, placing a large population in a remote location with minimal road access and only a local bus. The developer has ample alternatives within Anmore's current zoning bylaws to allow substantial development and a substantial profit. I purchased our home in Anmore due to open spaces, forests, peace and quiet, and ease of driving without congestion. Totally against cutting down healthy trees when they are needed for so many good reasons. Larger population brings greater cost to current residents as well. Example, policing, fire protection, roads, more village staff. The next submission is from Jubin Jalali. States, I hereby submit this statement on behalf of my family members, Leela Sultani and Rogina Jalali, to express our strong opposition to Icona Properties' proposed amendment to the official community plan for Anmore South. We request that this statement be included in the public record for the Anmore South OCP amendment application. The proposed OCP amendment contradicts the objectives set forth by Metro 2050 as it seeks to establish a densely populated community in a remote area with limited road access and a reliance on a local bus transportation. We are deeply concerned about the potential adverse effects of densifying Anmore South without any corresponding expansion of road infrastructure, which is already under significant strain. This approach poses serious risks to traffic conditions, the natural environment, wildlife habitats, and local hatcheries. We emphasize that the Mayor of Port Moody has repeatedly affirmed that Ioko Road is operating at full capacity. According to the latest traffic study conducted by Bunt and Associates, the existing two roads, East Road and Sunnyside Road, are reported to have the capacity to accommodate only 450 new houses over an extended period of time. By introducing condominium developments and substantially increasing the number of homes by 3 to 4 times, the densification of Anmore South would potentially jeopardize the safety and well-being of residents who may become trapped on congested roads during emergencies such as wildfires. We firmly believe that this would constitute a grave injustice to humanity. Therefore, we urge the relevant authorities to carefully consider the potential consequences of the proposed OCP amendment and prioritize the preservation of the community's safety, natural surroundings, and overall quality of life. It is our sincere hope that our concerns are taken into account and that alternative approaches are explored to ensure the sustainable and responsible development of Anmore South in accordance with the principles of Metro 2050 and the best interests of its residents. And the last one is from Francine Major. It states, I wish to have placed in the public record that I do not support in any way the Icona Properties OCP amendment application for their properties known as Anmore South. It goes against everything that Metro 2050 is attempting to achieve, placing a large population in a remote location with minimal road access and only a local bus. The developer has ample alternatives within Anmore's current zoning bylaws to allow substantial development and a substantial profit. This will move through the system to Metro Vancouver, and there needs to be a paper trail to show that people object to this development proposal, but not all development. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other people want to add to the public comments? If you could get up and name and address, please. If you could make sure to turn the mic on. Just if you right, just tap it and it'll go blue. You just pull the mic down. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. My name is Trudy Schneider. I live at 2318 Sunnyside Road. I did want to say my comment. First of all, I have a few comments, but if there's no one else, can I have more time?
No.
Oh, sorry. All right. Well, I'm going to say it anyway. I really did think you did a good report. I read it as carefully as I could and understood it as well as I could. So I appreciated all that information all in one place. So my comment would then be that I hope council might, I think, what do you call it, table it or take this off the agenda for today so that we could actually hear some discussion about the main problem, which is transportation. So, you know, I think I can see my way clear through the 1 acre parcels because I know how many cars that is and I can predict that. Any other kind of thoughts are, you know, beyond my way of predicting. And I know that we've heard predictions about economic, you know, benefits to us and employment opportunities and on and on. I don't think we can predict any of those things. One of the things I do know about locally is traffic. And so until we get that one solved, I think it's going to be a tough issue in the community, and it would be really good if council could talk with TransLink, as Mr. Boyd pointed out, that it's a TransLink issue as well, to have that solved. It just isn't, it just in my mind, it just doesn't work. And that was my first comment. The second comment was about all these predictions, is that we don't actually, you know, you can predict things, and there's some things you can't predict, some you can control, you can't control. Some things are going to happen that we didn't expect. We might be able to do something about them. But I really think we need to hear you talk. I really want to know that you've really thought about it. I think other people do too, that it isn't just going to be a done deal tonight or any other night. And maybe I'm wrong about the process because I don't really know how far along the process we are. I made myself a little flow chart and I've got it that we're nowhere, except that we're going to go to maybe Metro after this all gets done. But I really think all the way along, you need to think about getting in and out. And one of our main goals is this aging in place. And that's aging in place in my house. If you look it up on the internet, a lot of that is aging in place in your house. It's not buying something over there. And having ambulances get to my house in a fast way and everybody else's house, so we can all be safe and age in place. And it's building sidewalks in front of our house and having things accessible. So aging in place is kind of, I think, been misplaced here as a selling point, because that really isn't the idea. And I don't know about the overall economic benefit. I'd like to hear more about that. Okay, thank you, and thanks for not calling time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, hold on.
Test, 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 test.
Yep. Anybody else want to provide comments in public?
Hi, Ryan Froese, 2110 Sunnyside. I look at this plan and I think of what the Metro 2050 plan says, and it's talking about energy efficiency and keeping manageable growth. I'm actually quite excited about what they brought forward. I know this isn't deciding on what's going to happen. It's telling the Icona property, sure, let's see what you have before we move forward. So it's not even the first reading. It's telling them to go ahead and make a plan. I look at, they've added in a Crystal Creek connector. I think that's going to help great with traffic. They're putting another connector on Fern, and I like how their roads really branched off, so it's not clustering the traffic entering at one specific spot. In fact, it's balancing it. I think going to a higher density will allow you to retain the green space they're trying to retain around the wetlands. I think it should at least be listened to and explored. See what they're talking about. If they're talking about all 50-story condos, maybe not. But I'd like to see it. And that's actually with the, I know there's some talk about a 2050 plan and a 2030 plan. This actually achieves most of what it's looking for. It's putting smaller density houses closer together, more energy efficient. I think it fits what we're looking for, but thank you. And
Good. Thank you. Any other?
Sorry, oops.
You can move that, adjust the microphone.
Testing. Nancy Maloney, 1724 East Road. And as a preliminary first step, what I think should be done is that the village should hire an independent community planner related to the future of Anmore South. As an existing contractor with the village who tends to support the agenda of council because his ongoing employment is based upon that. He's not a totally independent voice, and also he's an engineer, not a community planner. So I think it's time to step back. Some years ago, the village actually did have a community planner who looked at those planning sort of considerations, not just from an engineering perspective, but from an environmental and quality of life perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or sorry, any other comments? Okay, see none, we'll move on. We have two delegations this evening. We have Friendly Forest Preschool Association. Katrina Perkins is going to provide a summary to Anmore Community Grant funding use. Welcome, and thank you for coming. And looks like we have some slides.
I do have some slides. Hello, everybody. Hello, Mayor, councillors. My name is Katrina Perkins, and I'm the president of Friendly Forest this year. Is the
Yep.
So as most of you know, we've been around for a little while. We opened our doors in 1985. We are a parent cooperative preschool overseen by a volunteer parent board, and we're a registered charity. We provide programs So in terms of the tenure of our staff, that's been just really incredible to see. They want to stick around, which also speaks to the kind of community that Friendly Forest provides, not just for the children, but also for staff. On an average year, we have about $220,000 of revenue. The majority of those, over 70%, are through parent registration and fees for the year. We receive provincial funding, BC wage enhancement, and early child care operating funding. We also get grants from the BC Gaming Grant, Kinsight Child Service, which is a nonprofit organization, and of course the Anmore Community Grant. And although the Anmore Community Grant might represent a small percentage of our total operating funding, it's really funding that we rely on. It's really the only community grant that we've been successful in receiving, although kids from surrounding areas other than Anmore come to Friendly Forest, and that in some years actually make up the majority of our children, just by virtue of the physical location of our preschool, which we've not been successful in applying and receiving funding from Fort Moody, Fort Coquitlam, and Coquitlam areas. This funding here also represents the cash that we operate with. It doesn't really capture the probably hundreds of volunteer hours that our larger parent community provides, as well as fundraising support by individual members for the community, which we've had a lot of this year, which is really great. Now on to fun stuff. So last year in 2021-22 calendar year, we received $1,000 from the Anmore Community Grant. We spent the majority of that to replace our bike. We spent the majority of that money to replace our aging balance bikes. It's a pretty serious business at Friendly Forest. The kids have races, there's winners, so it's one of our most well-used and loved items. We also expanded our ever-growing wood blocks, and you see kids there just building towers and play structures and really learning about light and reflections, which is another really popular item. This year we received $1,200 from the Anmore Community Grant. That money has already been spent. You see those triangles there, those are activity boards that we've purchased, which are very popular, so there's a lot of lessons learned about sharing those. We purchased a number of wheelbarrows that we use outside. Also, we've expanded our wood and hollow blocks that you see kids building all sorts of structures with. We've also purchased an outdoor tent. You see the red tent, or outdoor tube that you see out there. We've purchased additional play items for our kinetic sand and Play-Doh, and we've expanded our water table as well. So those are the things that we used funding from this year. Thanks very much for the community support, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good. Well, thank you, and the amazing work that you do for our community. Any questions or comments? No? Thank you very much for coming. We so appreciate it. Actually, it's only from the audience, sorry. Yeah. I'm sure you could meet up later on in that, but okay. Okay, thank you very much. We now have our second delegation, Tres Capital, Anmore Gate Developments, Bella Terra Developments. Michael Geller and Ali Sorupson to provide an update on the Pinnacle Ridge Hillside landowners' attention. Welcome. Oh, did you get this? Did you get the front? Air going. We got some air going. Yeah.
Oh, we have what? He found it. I turned on.
Should we? Oh, thanks, Jim. Can we get that all on the one screen, if that's possible?
Our presentation needs to go on a diet, but anyway.
Slide it forward, Chris.
Anyway,
Slide it forward. Slide the whole machine forward.
forward, yeah. I think you want to go the other way.
Yeah, don't you go forward? Don't you go forward?
More. There you go.
That's better. Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Anyway, yes. So good evening. My name is Michael Geller. I'm here representing Trez Financial, and also with me is Ali, who's a planning consultant to Anmore Gate, and we appreciate the opportunity to take some time, and we promise to be very brief because we know you have a full agenda, but we wanted to bring you up to date on some of the discussions and preliminary planning that's taking place regarding the Pinnacle Ridge hillside properties. And also in attendance is Mohammed Basfat of Anmore Gate, Tony Baroni of Bellaterra, Philip Pincus of Trez, and either here or watching is Steve Robb, Jim Korchinski, and Dick Cresswell, who are some of the smaller property owners in the area. And I'm going to pray that if I press this button, I'll get to the next slide. So there are 7 different properties in the hillside, Pinnacle Ridge hillside, and the total land area is about 80 acres, so it's a substantial area. And the 3 major landowners have been working together over the last little while to try and come up with some concepts that we want to ultimately bring forward to council this fall. But one of the things that we have done is prepared a joint access agreement because, as was pointed out by council a number of years ago, access through some of these properties is through other properties, and I'm pleased to report that that access agreement is in place. The current zoning on these properties is 1 acre and single-family lots, and obviously development could proceed on that basis, but I think it's generally accepted that that's not likely going to be a fiscally sustainable development for the village, and so we have been exploring other ideas. As some of you know, Pinnacle Ridge has been discussed for some time, and indeed I was here 4 years ago observing a presentation July 16, 2019, so almost exactly 4 years ago, which was considered by council. And there were then 2 rezoning applications. And the decision at that time was to look at these proposals, predominantly single-family lots of varying sizes from Trez, at densities a little higher than 1 acre lots, but below the 1.8 acre threshold that's set out in the OCP. This was the plan by the Anmore Gate, which had 33 single-family lots and semi-detached units. And at that time, some of you may recall that council moved and seconded that the application be referred to various bodies, that staff also engaged the services of an economic consultant, and also that the property owners worked together to ensure that there could be a future extension of Charlotte Crescent to serve this development rather than rely on the one road from East Road. So in our discussions, we are very cognizant of what we believe are many of the key concerns of this community. And I think the first one is to respect the semi-rural character of Anmore. And I've heard a lot of discussion since I appeared before council 7 years ago preaching the importance of semi-rural character and how it was not necessarily just a function of density. Others think it's perhaps not as important, but we think it is important, and certainly in our discussions. We've also recognized the importance of protecting the natural environment which surrounds us. And in that regard, 30% at least of the properties will be maintained as open space. And thirdly, looking at how to create a fiscally sustainable development for the village. And obviously one way to achieve that is through higher density than might otherwise be approved or allowable under the official community plan. And with that, I'd like to call upon Ali to finish off this presentation and share a few more of our thoughts.
Hello, everyone. I know for a little bit of time, I have to go through the balance of the slides relatively quick. As Michael noted, financial sustainability of any future developments on the hillside has always been paramount. So to better assess the details of such financial sustainability, We're going to work with Rollo and Associates to carefully examine and present to the staff and the community about the tax revenues generated versus a range of density to offset or exceed the maintenance costs of the municipal infrastructure required to service such developments. Based on our preliminary studies, what we know is that the conceptual plan considers a density of greater than 1.8 units per acre to support a financially sustainable development. Along with the fiscal impact study, we are also conducting a couple of other engineering reports, including geotechnical, hydro, transportation, water, SANI, drainage, and other relevant documents. So the updated conceptual plan considers a variety of housing choices for the evolving need of the community, including smaller detached homes, range of cluster housing forms, similar to the successful example of Secret Ridge at Burke Mountain, and ground-oriented townhomes form. With that, the highlighted conceptual plan is shown here. Basically, the plan calls for a mix of housing choices. For example, Trez on its 40-acre property is considering a broader range of housing, including single-family, semi-detached lots, cluster homes, and other suitable housing forms. Also, Anmore Gate and Bella Terra 2 are considering a mix of single-family housing and cluster housing. Besides the site planning, we are also working on the details of future trail and open space for a cohesive connectivity on the hillside through an environmentally sensitive trail planning. In addition, the updated conceptual plan will also address the need for a properly functioning septic system, as well as fire smart community in accordance with OCP RLU 12 policies. One of the other items that we are carefully examining is to address various transportation policy requirements as set out in the OCP. For example, we are giving careful consideration to road widths, provision of proper sidewalks, and studying different options to reduce the need for a car to recognize the change in transportation habits. To sum this up, the hillside landowners are looking forward to working with the village staff and the community to complete design development of our conceptual plan and come back in the fall with a comprehensive package requesting for an OCP amendment and rezoning to allow for a more financially sustainable development and to provide a broader range of housing choices for Anmore residents, from younger families to aging-in-place households with their changing demands. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim, could you, any questions from council? Questions, comments? Okay. No? Thank you very much for your presentation. Oh, sorry, Councillor Trowbridge? Yeah. Can we turn this down a little bit? We're a little bit too loud here.
Are we too loud?
Yeah.
Hi. Are you using a third party to do a financial study on how this all pencils out?
Yes, Rollo and Associates.
Okay, I thought I heard that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
If I could just add one thing, there was a discussion before about the need to have resources to support the council and staff as you review these various applications. And I wanted to commit on behalf of these landowners that we're willing to pay the full cost of any planning consultants or others that you wish to retain to help process our applications. We realize there's a lot of work related to these applications, and we're fully committed to funding the cost of those additional consultants.
I think that would be a part of any sort of application coming forward. So thank you. Thanks. Okay, we'll now move on to minutes of the regular council meeting held on June 27, 2023. Could I get someone to move those minutes? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Minutes of the special council meeting held on June 29th. Someone to move those? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Richardson.
The only sort of concern I have is, while it accurately reflects the meeting, what was actually discussed is $50,000 for windows of the hub, and none of those numbers are captured anywhere in the minutes. So if you're reading this independently, didn't attend the meeting, you really have no idea what was promised. And the way I read it right now, is, you know, the 100 grand or so goes to EV, and the 300 grand goes to further hub development. And I think that would be helpful if it was clarified.
Ms. Elrick, do you want to speak to that? I guess the word equipment could be replaced with, because there was some equipment that was added, i.e. the demising wall as well, but we should add, and also glazing, I think, should be added to the minutes.
The recommendation would remain the same.
Yep.
But if council wishes to have staff flesh out some of the discussion points, that could certainly be done and then included in the next council meeting for adoption.
Okay, okay. So they've been moved and seconded, so we'll just leave it then right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Just as a point of clarification, the dividing wall was not discussed in that meeting at all.
Yeah, it was.
It was not.
Anyway. Okay, so so it's been moved and seconded, so we just, what would be the process on that then?
Council can defer the motion to the next regular meeting
Okay.
to include amendments to flesh out to include further discussion
Okay,
points.
could I get someone to, well then, so it's been moved and seconded, the initial, so we'll have to withdraw that. Is that fine to be withdrawn of the minutes? Okay, and then to defer the minutes, so could I get someone to move defer? Moved, second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Oh, sorry, was there any business arising from the one set of minutes that we passed on June 27th? No? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Anybody want to pull anything from the consent agenda? No? Could I get someone to move the consent agenda? Move, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to legislative reports. 9A, Council Committee recommendations. Michelle.
Thank you. Staff was directed to report on estimated costs to provide administrative support at committee meetings and a suggested schedule of meetings to be held once the Anmore Community Hub construction is completed. So staff obtained estimates from professional contractors that provide that type of support in the form of minute taking and providing procedural advice to the chair during committee meetings. For the 4 committees that meet monthly, the estimate was approximately $30,000 per year. If meetings were changed to quarterly, costs would be approximately $9,600, and that takes into account a few additional meetings in addition to the quarterly. Additionally, to increase community participation and the likelihood of quorum being met at meetings, committee memberships could be increased to 7 members, including the chair. In the agenda package on page 20, there's a meeting schedule that's proposed with the Community Engagement, Culture and Inclusion Committee and Environment Committees meeting February, April, July, and October, and the Parks and Recreation Committee and Public Safety Committees meeting March, June, September, and November. As we discussed at the previous meeting, the Accessible British Columbia Act received royal assent on June 17th, 2021, and comes into effect September 1st, 2022. And we have 1 year to come into compliance with that. An accessibility committee may be included in an already established committee as long as the committee meets the requirements set out in the Act. So there are 4 recommendations to go along with this report. The first one is that staff update the terms of reference for the Community Engagement, Culture and Inclusion Committee to add age-friendly, including youth and accessibility matters, update the mandate and membership to meet the Accessible British Columbia Act requirements, and increase the membership to 7 members. That staff update the terms of references for all select committees to change the frequency of the meetings to quarterly or at the call of the chair and increase memberships to 7, including the chair. That a budget of up to $3,000 be allocated from the surplus general fund reserve for 2023, and that staff be directed to include an allocation of $10,000 to provide administrative minute-taking and procedural support at select committee meetings and future budget considerations, and that staff update the terms of reference for the Finance Committee to change the frequency of meetings to quarterly or at the call of the chair. Thank you.
Good. And I think just to add to that, over the last period, it's been a bit of a tough go on twofold. COVID really limited the amount of meetings that we were having. as well as we didn't, after COVID, we didn't have a meeting space. That's all going to change in the coming months with the new Village Hub. And as well, as we've seen tonight, there's some development proposals that are going to be coming forward, which will be vetted through all the committees. So I'm glad that that I think the call of the chair and keeping these as quarterly is appropriate. I know that last year I think a couple of the committee meetings only met twice a year. So it's good to have this budget, but I think it would address and make sure we're going to be doing a recruitment drive right at the beginning of September. Hopefully people will apply to get on some of these committees and that. They're a very valuable tool in regards, and a lot of these proposals we will be vetting through all the committees, so there'll be a lot of work to put forth. So with that being said, I'm going to, someone to move the recommendations. Moved, seconded, any discussion? Councillor Richardson.
Just for the benefit of the audience and myself in general, currently all the committees do not have people on them, is that correct?
We're up for new recruitment.
Okay, and that'll happen in September?
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Webering.
Yeah, sorry, with the CECI committee, is there any requirement that you have to have a minimum number of meetings? Like, there's quite stringent requirements as to the membership. I don't even know if we're even going to be able to meet those requirements.
Yeah, I've talked to a few of the other municipalities, and they've gotten, they can't make the requirements, and,
Okay.
there's an understanding, so.
Okay. And then there was a discussion, I don't know what happened to the report. I can't remember what happened to it, but there was some discussion about combining committees. That was a staff recommendation. I think it was at the last meeting or the meeting before. So maybe because of these proposals that are becoming before us, that's probably not a good idea.
No,
we do need separate committees.
Yes, we're going to keep with what was in place.
Okay, and I agree with the quarterly. I think you're going to get more done 4 times a year than trying to have meetings for the sake of meetings. And I guess my last question, is this good for staff? I mean, we don't want to waste staff's time. We want these meetings to be efficient. So this is a good, and also, just for clarity, we're going to have staff members at every meeting taking minutes?
No,
Or-
through the chair. So in terms of the meeting schedule, the agenda preparation and follow-up on agenda items and recommendations that come out of the meeting that would go into council, that would all be handled through existing staffing. The support at the meeting would be contracted out through, there's a few companies that do procedural and minute-taking support for these types of meetings. So that would be the additional budget ask, would be for that. Currently, the chairs, as you know, are sort of taking your own notes and providing quasi-meetings for staff, and staff is back in the office listening to the recordings of those meetings. So that didn't seem to be working well for the past while, so that is the change there.
Okay,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that change.
Councillor Cryer.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for reworking this. I know that it's a far cry from what you suggested at our last meeting, but I think it's important going into the new Village Hub that we maintain status quo for a while, and I think reducing the number of meetings and increasing the number of members we should remedy a lot of those problems that we were having, not to mention going through a pandemic, which made everything very difficult. But we have a lot of things coming along that I think the community will be engaged and interested in, so I hope that we don't have trouble filling those spaces. I know I'll be working to get them filled, but I appreciate the work. I support bringing someone in. I think that's really important for both the council as well as staff. So good work, thank you.
Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, I like this hybrid approach too. But I just have a procedural question. So the way we do it now is a bit challenging. Yeah. So if we have these resources, specialized note takers, et cetera, will that negate the requirement for recording altogether?
I think it could be either way depending on the minute taker's preference. I've worked with agencies before who they recorded the meetings just for reference, for their own procedures, and so that we have, if we wanted to look back at, type of thing. But they're typically, if that happens, it's just for the minute taking purposes, and then those recordings are typically destroyed after the minutes are adopted and don't really form any part of our record.
Okay, thank you.
You know, and I just wanted to add, in the past, what we did is we actually solicited this opportunity in the village, and we were able to capture somebody from the village who was able to attend these meetings, couple-hour meetings and that, and provide the minutes. It was a good sort of part-time job for that person for a while. So, it may be something that we look at down the road. But anyway, it's been moved and seconded, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to 9B, award and supply of a delivery on the dump truck contract. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. So we did put out to tender the supply of the dump truck that had been allocated in the budget, up to $380,000. We received 2 quotes back, and those quotes were those tenders were graded by both myself and Joe and Scott from Public Works, and the top proponent was Harbor International Trucks. The total contract price on both of the trucks, with all of the taxes included, did come in slightly over our budget. We do pay PST, but we get a refund on the GST that we pay. So the recommendation this evening would be that the contract award of the supply and delivery of 1 dump truck for a total contract price of $366,500, excluding taxes, be awarded to Harbor International Trucks, and that the 2023-2027 5-year financial plan be amended to include applicable taxes over and above the approved $380,000 budget.
Good. Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Open up for discussion. Councillor Richardson.
In general, as I did earlier in the year, I have trouble with near 400 grand for a dump truck that has no ROI whatsoever done behind it. I understand there's a few anecdotes. You save Ken Spence some digger time. You got a better belly plow maybe because it's heavier, and you get less trips to rock salt. But if you do the financial analysis on those, it comes out to a couple K, $2,000 maybe, $3,000, and that doesn't justify a $400,000 expenditure. The next thing is, I don't know if staff can amend the 5-year financial plan without council approving it. So I don't know if that's correct. And why not just have the number in of what the total is, rather than this, we're going to put some tax on it and it's going to come to some number. It should have exact numbers on it.
Ms. Martin, I think the 5-year financial plan actually had this in it, did it not? So it only has to, we're just amending the total?
Through the chair,
Yeah.
the recommendation is that staff amend the plan. So that is a council recommendation.
Yeah.
So it's at direction of council. So it is a council resolution. So it's not staff. Staff, you're correct in that staff cannot amend the financial plan, which is why there's a recommendation before council this evening.
Yep. Good. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Weber.
Yes, further to Councillor Richardson's comment, what is the total? What are we talking about? And why can't we get it under the 380,000? Is there a used truck? Like a year old?
Through the chair, the amount is, we do pay the GST initially and then get the rebate, so that's why we didn't include the total amount. But the amount that the village would be responsible for would be the $366,500. Sorry, my phone's not turning on. Sure.
So as you know, the GST is included, so we'll just talk about the PST.
Right.
And I wanted to also mention that the PST for vehicles recently changed in October of 2022, and that's why we're kind of looking at this in a different way.
Okay.
The PST value on this truck is $25,655, which we have to take as an expense, which puts us around $12,000 over the $380,000 expense that we have currently budgeted.
Okay, so it's not going to exceed 400,000 total?
No,
Okay.
it's 392, 155
Okay.
with the
Okay.
PST.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a few comments. That is fully outfitted as well, lights, all the safety equipment as well. couple years ago, we bought a used truck, single axle truck, and it became a very, very valuable piece of machinery with our Public Works Department, to the point where they actually suggested that we get rid of it and upgrade it. There is a lot of work that this village, i.e. we used to have a dump site right down by here. We can't use that dump site anymore. So there's an amount of labor that goes into us hiring out, as well as using our smaller F-550s, which is substantial. We also had, and we're starting to see significant snowfalls. This truck will keep our main arteries clear. It has the weight, it has the ability to do that even when the snow is coming down considerably. And then I think the intangible that we really are going to be adding to it is a brine system. All the municipalities are going brine for an environmental aspect, but also for an application process. We can apply brine earlier in the afternoon before snowfall comes, and it pays significant return on making sure the roads are staying clear. And it's one thing as Anmore residents, we want to make sure we keep our roads clean. And it's one of the things that our Public Works Department does an amazing job on, to the point where we wonder if they could continue on through Port Moody to get us even further down the hill. So this was something that we really had the opportunity to take a test drive on one. So it was great. So with that, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Did you want to add? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. I asked for. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not purely an arithmetic equation for a piece of equipment like this. Because this truck is capable of doing the brining, and brining uses 75% less, so it uses 25% of the total salt as rock salt. Plus it's more effective because it stays on the paved surface. Rock salt gets knocked off, and it also needs moisture before it works. So taking out all the monetary side of things, there's something that I think we need to think about as residents. Brining is the only solution that can go on prior to the icing of the road to prevent icing of the road. That can literally save lives. So it goes beyond an extra $12,000. I'm big time in favor of this.
Good. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll now move on to the 9C Anmore South OCP amendment application. Mr. Boyd, you're up.
Thank you. I'm just going to have it over here.
Is it just me or is it blurry? Or you find it blurry? It is a little blurry. Here we go. Thank you, Your Worship. As you're aware, today we have the report regarding the OCP amendment application made by Icona. And I'll roll through the general report that's within your meeting minutes today. I'll try and keep it on a little bit of a higher level instead of going page by page of the next 30 pages. If Council has any questions, just please stop me as I go through and we can kind of address them straight away, or you can wait until the end of the report and I'll do my best to answer it. Okay, so just the general topics I'll cover in the presentation here. So we're looking at a quick introduction, a little bit about Anmore's demographics, proposed amendments,
the impacts that an OCP amendment might have, public consultation, and then the next steps going forward. So, general introduction, we're 152 acres in size. The parcel of land is owned by Icona Properties. It's currently zoned as RS1. There is an existing subdivision application for approximately 84 to 86 lots under the RS1 zoning at present. It is classified as a special study area. I'll go through what a special study area is from a high level in a minute. And the request was to amend the village's OCP, which was made by Icona, not by the village. Okay, so the lands currently have a regional land use designation of rural, with an overlay of an SSA, which is a special study area. The SSA essentially lowers the voting requirement of the regional board. The regional board is Metro Vancouver, and I'll do a little bit of a high-level review of what Metro Vancouver's role is in a second. But essentially, the SSA lowers the bar for passing the regional board at 50% plus 1 instead of the 75% weighted vote. So that's when you hear about special designation area, that categorically is kind of one of the major pieces of a special study area. Okay, so the role of Metro Vancouver. Metro Vancouver only have a role provided that the village move forward with an OC application process to the third reading. At that point, our OCP amendment would be referred to the Metro Vancouver board, because if we changed our OCP in any meaningful way, we'd have to rewrite our regional context statement and relook at the way that it's evaluated within the regional growth strategy. If our OCP doesn't align correctly right now with the regional growth strategy, it can be amended at that point. So that's why we use amendments, is that it isn't something that's set in stone. Things can be amended and changed over time with the regional growth strategy. However, it does need to be reviewed by the regional planning committee, which is a staff committee, and then from there we go to an elected committee, which is the Metro Vancouver board. So it's quite an important role that they play, because they do actually hold part of a key to if something can be changed or not. And another piece is the urban containment boundary. An urban containment boundary essentially allows an area to be serviced by sewer or not, so sanitary sewer. If it's not serviced by sanitary sewer, it becomes practically impossible to have an urban designation on a piece of land. So that's just another piece to keep in mind. So Metro Vancouver do have a role to play, but not at this point in time. Okay, so the legislative process. So we're legislated by the Local Government Act. Under the Local Government Act, it talks about what an OCP must do or must not do. So generally, I'll try and keep this as concise as possible. So the LGA kind of specifies that the OCP must have a location, amount, type, and density of residential development required to meet the anticipated housing needs over a period. Location, amount, and type of present and proposed commercial, industrial, institutional, or recreational land uses. Restrictions on the use of land that is subject to hazardous conditions or that is environmentally sensitive to development. Location and phasing of any major transportation network upgrades and utility system upgrades, such as connections to a regional sewer or water system. It also must look at the location and type of present and proposed public facilities, including schools and parks. And policies respecting affordable housing, rental, and special needs housing, and target the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in the area covered by the OCP and policies, and the actions of the local government proposed towards achieving those targets. So, as you can see, it's quite an overarching document. You have to look at many different components, and it obviously is a very important piece. Sorry, I must grab it. So the next piece then is, what must an OCP amendment do? Sorry, I just talked about that. Why should you amend an OCP? Some people look at an OCP as like, well, it's set in stone, we've decided on this. Well, an OCP can be amended. It can be amended via a council resolution. Well, it has to be amended by a council resolution, but it can be directed by a council because they've decided that they'd like to go for an OCP amendment or update, which is typically what happens every 8 to 10 years in a municipality. You relook at your OCP and you think about, hey, has our community changed in that time period? Maybe we want to relook at the book. Or, as what is in front of us today, an amendment by a developer could come forward also, and council can decide if they want to change the OCP to come to an align with the requirements of what the developer might want. So, in regards to Anmore South right now, we would need an OCP amendment because our OCP right now doesn't really, on a high level, allow Icona to be able to amend the rezoning and land use the way it's written within the OCP amendment right now. So we'd have to look at rewriting those if council wish to proceed. And then obviously some other opportunities. Sometimes there's new development opportunities which arise. And also some economic policies could come forward. Policy alignment. So the policy OCP needs to align with the regional, provincial, national policies and strategies. So you could look at that maybe as the housing crisis within BC as one of the reasons why you might want to look at it. Okay, and then others can be also towards environmental regulations and housing policies or transportation plans. Okay, and also obviously it's really important to have community input, no matter if it's an amendment made by a developer or if it's via council's decision just to open up the OCP. It's important to have community input because it's obviously what the community want to see within the municipality, and they should have a significant amount of public engagement to hear that going forward. Okay, so what does our current OCP contain in regards to the Ioko lands? Sorry, I call it Ioko land still, Anmore South. So as I kind of mentioned earlier, it has been designated as a special study area. And essentially the special study area also kind of says that the municipality, in the past, when they looked at the OCP, knew they wanted to do something on the land that was something different to what it really is right now. And so it's kind of this designation of, hey, back when we looked at the OCP, we wanted to do something. Just at that point, we didn't know what it was. And we also didn't have a developer coming forward asking to do anything. So we're at that point right now. So in our OCP, we actually have 4 policies in regards to the Anmore Southland. So IOL U1 and 2 were in relation to the David Avenue connector. As some of you may or may not know, that road right away was actually dissolved by Port Moody Council, I want to say a couple of years ago now. And so those 2 policies aren't really relevant anymore because there's no way to make that land connection any further through that land. And so really we're left with 2 policies, 3 and 4, which are relevant, and I'll just read those 2 policies to you now. The village supports the completion of cost-recovered neighbourhood planning process funded by the applicant, complete with extensive community and stakeholder engagement through which the applicant and the village will jointly explore appropriate uses and form of development. Such as a process should ideally include joint discussions with the City of Port Moody and include further technical analysis, which may include but may not be limited to the provisions of traffic impact projections on the resultant new population, an assessment of the amenity needs generated by a result of the new population, an analysis of potential job creation, employment and impacts, a complete analysis on impacts upon the village finances resultant from development. So this would include revenues and expenditures as well as capital and operating considerations, and the preparation of environmental assessments. Okay. And then policy IOLU4, so it's time to scroll to it. In consideration of the future, any development on Ioko land should strive to achieve the highest levels of neighbourhood performance in relating to minimize environmental impact, limiting energy requirements related to GHG footprint, reducing potable water and other resource consumption, minimizing surface runoff while maximizing at-source infiltration, minimizing waste diversion from regional landfills, delivery of overall design excellence, or contributing positively to the existing character of the village. So those are the current OCP policies in relation to this parcel of land. So next, as we were just going through this, there was some interest in demographics as we kind of dug into the numbers. So just for context, Anmore's population currently grows roughly grows 5% every 5 years. We take this data from national statistics and from the census recording data. So that's what's currently shown. So one thing that I found quite interesting as well is that Anmore currently has the lowest population density in the whole of the Lower Mainland. So it's lower than Belcara, it's lower than Lions Bay as well, and it's significantly lower. So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me right now, but it's in a factor of 4, I believe, against Belcara. So quite a significant lower density compared to any other municipality in the Lower Mainland currently. The economics in Anmore, as most of us know, the real economics in Anmore are really to do with housing development at this point in time, with single-family homes. and that's really, and then the staff who are employed by the village. Other than that, there's a little bit with home businesses, such as there's a few B&Bs and a few home kind of side businesses. So nothing too great, as we know, within Anmore with regards to economics. One piece I wanted to touch upon is policing costs. So this is something that's come up a number of times. So policing costs, we currently pay a significantly discounted amount within policing costs, whereas we are below a 5,000 person community. And we can have a bit of a variation in policing costs based on where our population is today. It isn't a straightforward number. But as we creep towards 5,000 to just under 15,000, it goes to 70% capture that we would have to pay, and then forward from that. Yeah.
I just wanted to actually bring some facts regarding the policing, if I could. Sorry, where is it here? Sorry, Chris. Where's my notes here? It's an interesting point that you bring up, because there's a lot of things happening currently with the RCMP, as I'm sure everybody's aware of in this room, especially with what's happening in Surrey. There's going to be an announcement on Wednesday, and it's going to be a significant announcement. Currently in Anmore, we pay, or last year we paid $242,000 for policing. That's to the RCMP. This year, we paid $301,000, so it's gone up $60,000. And there is a conversation going on right now that the RCMP are going to pull out of rural policing, which would have a significant effect on us. We would either have to, there would have to be another force brought in, but we wouldn't be able to get this. So I just wanted to kind of, policing is a big deal right now, and the conversations, I think it's really important that people start following. The Surrey detachment, if they don't go with the RCMP, that's going to have a significant impact on the rest of the RCMP detachments in the Lower Mainland and in British Columbia. So, sorry.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah. No, I appreciate the context. And then housing stock. So housing stock, as the majority of us know, the housing stock within Anmore is predominantly single-family dwellings. There are a few duplexes, quadplexes, one or two, and then the other alternatives are basement suites and a few carriage homes as well. So not very many different housing stocks currently are available within Anmore. So some other information contained within the report that I thought was kind of interesting as well was the average age of Anmore residents is actually half a year lower than the actual demographic of the rest of the Lower Mainland. However, it does swap when you look at the mean population average, and it jumps up by 4.8 years. So just for those who might have forgotten the difference between mean, modal, and average, the mean is when you add up, it's when you put all the ages together in one line, and you have all your 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, and you line them all up, and you look at the middle number, that's the mean. And so in Anmore, that is currently 4.8 years higher, which I'll get into the reasons why I believe that happens in Anmore. So I think one of the driving demographics within Anmore is the average cost of housing in Anmore is higher than that of Metro Vancouver, meaning that the average household income needs to increase to offset those differences. Typically, average household income increases with age until retirement age. And then secondly, the large properties within Anmore require significant upkeep from a cost and maintenance perspective. Once retirement age is reached, it becomes harder for residents to maintain properties. This typically leads to downsizing of properties in Anmore. There is a limited housing stock that allows for downsizing, which results in over 65 population migrating out of Anmore. And it's just kind of, I can't really show with my pointer, maybe I can. Hold on. So this can be seen in these kind of demographics that, Anmore kind of shoots up with younger families in the 15 to 24, where they're housing with their parents' large houses. And as they move away to university and they start fledging from the nest, they disappear. And then there's a large gap then obviously in these areas, because these age demographics simply can't really afford to live within Anmore. And then as you see, it then swaps over the 45 to 54. These are the best earning ages of a demographic. And so they can afford to migrate back into Anmore. And then as you can see then the 55 to 64s, significant amount still, they age in place in their homes at that point. And then it starts dropping off against the demographic again. So you can see that then at that point, it looks like to be migration out at that point. So just a general overview of some of Anmore's demographics. Oh, got off on my pointer. There it is, right. Okay, so the application was made by Icona Properties back in May. We've taken a little bit of time to digest it, to review it, to try and understand it, and a number of meetings to discuss the potentials and drawbacks and what have you, and how to best move this forward towards council at this point in time. So the general themes within the application, they talk about growth and development, diversifying the tax base, economic impact, there should be space there, sorry, the regional growth, vibrant, sustainable community, and public engagement. So they're kind of some of the main headings within the proponent's proposal. So the main policies within their application are as listed on the board there. So this section of the OCP amending a language, it kind of put forward some policies that they kind of made a first blush at for a first reading of a bylaw. So generally, Anmore South is a distinct master plan neighbourhood within the village of Anmore, accommodating community growth of approximately 3,300 new homes. The plan includes a phased build-out of approximately 25 years, a vibrant neighbourhood heart including local grocery, shops and services, a community centre, a market square and compact village scaled neighbourhood, while preserving the overall existing semi-rural character of Anmore. Okay. So this is the general land use plan. There's a number of different plans, but I thought this was perhaps the most poignant plan to highlight for the public today. This is contained within my report with a number of other applications. So you'll have to excuse me, I'm colourblind, so I always struggle with the colours. If I get the wrong colours, please shout out. So the red areas are the mixed use areas, which will be towards the commercial. The blue area is more the institutional public amenity section, such as community centre. And then we start looking at the green areas surrounding the creeks that would be become parkland and conserved land for environmental purposes, and then the other blobs then look towards to have higher density housing, and this area up towards Fern Drive would then look to be lower density housing to make a transition from the Fern Drive, the Corvado properties before you come down into the hill. So that's a general overview of the land use plan. You can see there's another little section over here for mixed use. Okay. So one of the things to be considered with an OC application, we don't have this currently in an Anmore OCP, and that's a neighbourhood plan. Because in the past, I think Anmore's been looked at as a whole. Our whole community is this, and now we're looking at the Anmore South, which, put it plainly, is a departure of what Anmore has been in the past from single-family dwellings. And so, in order to give you more control over what that will look like into the future, where you go from an OCP amendment to rezoning, you can have this neighbourhood plan, which provides more context behind the text within an OCP amendment. So we're going to have maps. It can provide you more information of how the land would be phased, used, and what have you. So a neighbourhood plan would typically show the residential areas, the commercial and mixed-use areas, the parks, the civic amenities, environmental requirements, the street sections, how the streets might function, the transportation planning, how would the development be serviced, how would we be sustainable, and what would be the cultural pieces within it. So they're obviously very highbrow kind of policy areas there, but you can get way more detailed within the neighbourhood plan to give you more certainty between an OCP amendment and rezoning, to keep the box somewhat constrained of what can be happening, so it isn't just opening Pandora's box and you can do whatever you like after the fact. So obviously an OCP text, to some degree can do that, but it's kind of like that usual policy, a picture can paint 1,000 words type of scenario, and that's where we kind of use some of these plans to highlight information. And to make it more reasonable when it comes to rezoning, to make sure they're in alignment with what was thought of OCP and then to rezoning. So if council chose to move forward with an OCP amendment application, a recommendation would be to have a neighbourhood plan being developed in conjunction with the OCP text, and then it should be adopted as part of the OCP. So it kind of becomes an integral part of it. So when you read that OCP amendment, that neighborhood plan is part of that piece as well. You don't have to, it can just be text and not the neighborhood plan. Sometimes they have, some municipalities I've seen in the past will do, well, here's just our general text, and then there's a neighborhood plan that it refers to, but it wasn't adopted with the OCP. So just some general ideas of what a neighborhood plan can give you. So as many letters were read out earlier today, yes, there's many impacts that this proposed community could have, and a lot of analysis needs to be completed during this process to give council and the public some more further information before readings happen further on with an OCP amendment. So again, I've kind of just listed some of the strategies up on the board here. If council want to ask any particular questions about these ones.
How far are you along in regard?
I've got 2 more slides.
Okay.
Okay. And obviously, a really big component of an OCP application amendment process is public consultation. Now, the proponent will do their public engagement that they have been doing. You've seen them, they've done public engagement events, they've done special engagement events with certain groups. We as a municipality would do our own independent from those people. And now, you don't have to, it's definitely a recommendation. The one thing you must do as a legal requirement is hold a public hearing. Just like we'd have in a rezoning application, we must have an official public hearing. Now you can have other events and then have a public hearing, and that would satisfy the legal requirements. Okay. And then just got one final slide here of the next steps. Man, that really is blurry. So currently we're obviously looking at the official community plan if council determined to go forward with a first reading in the future. Tonight, the recommendation, I'll read it in a second, would be to move this process forward in regards to an OCP amendment. So as you can see, there's a number of steps. So we have an OCP amendment. Once we reach a certain point, we would then refer it to Metro Vancouver. Metro Vancouver have to weigh in and decide if they were okay with the process. And following that, if those all made it through third and final readings, we would go through the final reading, at which point the OCP document would be amended, and the next step then would be rezoning. I shall take a sip of water and take questions.
Can we get the lights back on there? Thanks. Okay, before we get forward, adjusting. I'll open up for council for some questions. I'm sure there's lots of questions. I know I've got a list and that. Anybody want to start us off? Councillor Weber.
Just to clarify, so, I mean, just to be clear, this is very early in the game. This is sort of what people have been asking for and what we've always been committed to. I want to make that very clear. I understand the OCP amendment part coming first. I also like the fact of a neighborhood plan going with the OCP amendment. The only thing I see a problem with is if you amend the OCP with a neighborhood plan and then the developer sells or something changes, are you committed to that neighborhood plan? Because that's what people are sort of...
Yeah, it becomes a legal policy document.
Okay.
There's no saying that someone could not come back and ask for another amendment to that.
Right.
That would just be another amendment for an OCP.
So you would change the OCP if somebody said, well, we can't do that neighborhood plan, we want to do this neighborhood plan and this OCP amendment?
In theory you could, but council have kind of spent a lot of input getting to that final reading. It would be a council
Right.
decision if you'd want to open up that textbook.
Okay. I also want to make it very clear that, a lot of the concerns that I've heard so far, I mean, I expect to hear in the public engagement, and I want a lot of public engagement. And I guess I always look at vision. I look at, do people want something like this? And it was made fairly clear to me in the last election that they don't want 1 acre lots. They want something different. So all the concerns that I've heard so far, safety, roads, that sort of stuff, those are standard challenges in any development, in any community. I've always said with regards to traffic, Anmore's not going to have a traffic problem. Port Moody might have a traffic problem. And that's really up to them. We have to look at how we want to move forward as a community. I have concerns about where I'm going to retire. I want to retire in Anmore. I have a concern where my kids are going to live if they ever buy a place. They want to move to Anmore. So these are all things I hear, this is not just my opinion. These are things that I'm hearing from people. But certainly we need to vet all those things with our staff members and our paid consultants. Okay, I think I said that. Yeah, so obviously Icona's done a lot of work with regards to these reports, and there's reference to reviewing these reports. Are we going to hire our own consultants to redo the reports, or just to review, kind of validate Icona's reports?
Yeah, so in that regard, if council chose to move forward with the first reading of a bylaw, so we would then bring in our own independent experts, economists, community planners,
Right.
transportation planners, we'd have all those experts on our side of the table that would review their inputs.
Okay.
And go through and say, hey, we look at the reports, we want clarification, we might want to call out some certain pieces within those reports. But we'd only do that provided the council want to go forward with a draft amendment,
Right.
with a draft bylaw.
Fair enough. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
So just on,
Council, sorry.
sorry,
No, go ahead, go ahead.
so just on that one, if you do the committee of the whole recommendation, you're saying you can't go ahead and do the traffic studies? This doesn't make any sense
Yeah,
to me.
so the committee of the whole, the recommendation there was because in the past we've heard as staff that council would like the opportunity to talk to the developer directly and ask them questions directly. So that would be the opportunity at that point for council to have that open conversation prior to even coming to a first draft if that's what you want to do. Or you could say, yes, we would like to have first reading draft of this amendment, and during that process we'd like the committee of the whole following it.
Following or during?
It's however you'd like it as council, to be perfectly frank. It's however you guys want to engage with the applicant.
Okay, so that's a committee of the whole to engage with the applicant,
Yes.
but couldn't you have a committee of the whole also to engage with the public?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think, like, when I hear all the stuff over the last few years, like, I was a big fan, not of the sort of pro-urban aspect of this document, but I was a fan of it. Let's Anmore decide what Anmore wants, independent of a developer. Made a lot of sense to me. And this had some promise in that we were going to go do that. But there's actually been no public consultation other than that one survey from Anmore to the public since then. And it's been 2 and a bit years.
Ms. Elrick, sorry.
I know.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
And my recommendation would be more to go to the committee of the whole and engage the public on what they want in their committee. And in parallel with that, now I don't know if it requires the first reading or not, that you do the traffic study, you do an economic study. Specifically, I mean, we started this 2 years ago, and we stopped it because Icona said they were submitting something in November, and we never finished it. So the phase 3 of this, to me, is important for the residents of Anmore, and it's important to the residents of Anmore early on. So that would be more the direction that I would lean, more consultation, not less. And I think like we did for the community hub, you put a section of the website, you put Icona's application on there, and you start to engage the community. Yes, it's going to be challenging, because there's a lot of very diverse views, but I think the residents should design their committee, not the developer.
Yeah, so if I can just...
I just wanted, Karen wanted to say something, Ms. Elrick, just quickly.
Thank you through the chair. Should council decide that they would like to move forward with review of this application, part of what would be coming back to council would be a comprehensive consultation process, which would include a lot of those things that you're talking about and broader engagement and different types of engagement. There would be consultation and communication policies developed in conjunction with that, and we would be working with consultants on that as well.
Yeah, just to add context to that for 1 second, is kind of putting the cart before the horse, because that would be a lot of work prior to council even considering anything on the table. We don't actually have anything on the table to consider a first bylaw at this point in time. So that's why the recommendation is, let's move forward with a first draft so we can get something on the table, and then start asking all the real difficult questions at that point in time, public engagement.
Okay, but when we did the OCP back in 2012 to 2014, there wasn't a first draft on the table. You started with what should the development, what should this community look like? And you could do the same here. I know people refer this to as an amendment. Hang on.
I'm going to correct you there. We did have an OCP on the amendment. We were amending the OCP at that point. We weren't starting from scratch. So I had to correct you
Okay,
on that.
fair enough. But this is really, like, an amendment makes it sound small. It's not small. This is a huge change to the village forever. It's not this tiny little thing like infill, let's go from 1.8 to 2. It's go from 4,000 people to like 13,000 people over the same period of time. And I don't think it should be taken lightly.
I don't disagree.
Are you, sorry, I didn't mean to. Are you done? Okay. Councillor Crack.
Thank you. I don't think we're taking this lightly, Councillor Richardson, and I don't think we took infill lightly either. That was a big change, and I think it's important right now for us to be able to open the door to have these conversations. Correct me if I'm wrong. Once we take the next step, that's when we'll decide we can do committee of the whole. We can do essentially anything we want. Is that correct? I mean,
That's
we're
correct.
creating our path so that we are comfortable making a decision on behalf of the residents and opening the door so our residents can give their opinion based on the facts that we'll be putting into this report, correct?
100% correct.
Okay, and thank you for this, thank you for the work you put in on this. I thought it was very detailed and very good. I just want to also comment that there's been a lot of talk about traffic, and I speak, I think, for everyone here. The traffic is very, very important for us as well. We're not going to put something through if we don't have a good solution, explanation, whatever we call it, that addresses the traffic issues, because we do understand that this is a big change. Thank you to Ms. Elrick for answering all my questions. And question, just expanding upon Councillor Weverink's comments about the neighborhood plan. So that is then our legal document, lack of a better word, but so for the hillside that was coming forward, we don't know where that's going. That was very high level and much appreciated. So is it safe to say that the same neighborhood plan would work for the hillside? Or is it something that we would just look at and...
So just for clarification, you're asking, saying if you did a neighborhood plan for Icona's property,
Right.
would you transfer it to
Correct.
the hillside property? I think the answer would probably be no. You
No.
might want to take components out
Okay,
of it
okay.
and things that are important to you, but I doubt you'd want to use the same plan. I mean, that would be a council decision.
Okay, so we can or we can't? Or we can or we cannot? We're essentially laying out the plan now on how...
I personally would be saying the two distinct different neighborhoods.
Of course.
And so
Yeah,
I'd have two
yeah.
different neighborhood plans.
Okay. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Councillor Trowbridge.
Thank you. Yeah, all we're really talking about is welcoming the process to begin, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we're not voting on anything per se, relative to first, second, third reading, et cetera, et cetera. So I would struggle to figure out why we wouldn't want to see something new and creative in the village when we know that doing the same thing we've always done is ultimately not sustainable. So I need to make sure that the public process is included at every step, but that is a process that's not going to be deviated from. Is that true, or we're going to always include the public through this entire process?
Yeah, for sure. I think as we go forward, if council make the recommendation for the draft bylaw today, we'd be coming back at probably the next council meeting, which would be after the summer, with a public engagement strategy on how we would move this forward from a public engagement process, and kind of give you, here's a couple, here's all the table stakes. Which ones do you want? Which ones would you like to see going forward in here? And we'd obviously make recommendations going forward through our community engagement experts of saying we recommend you should do X, Y, and Z, and ending in the public hearing.
Right, I understand it's privately owned property, and it's going to be developed in some way or another, I would assume. I guess that's presumptuous, but I would assume that the owner is going to monetize. I'm sorry, I'm struggling with my voice. The owner is going to monetize the property in some way, and as long as, thank you, as long as there's adherence to a process we're basically going to be hearing creativity coming towards us, and we'll be able to assess that, and the public will be heard, and we'll decide whether that's a good fit for our community or not.
Correct.
Fair statement?
Yep, fair statement, for sure.
Okay.
Okay, I've got a few comments. I think the key thing that was just commented was there's going to be a process, and a very public process. You know, the proponent has held their own process. It's, if we move this forward, it's now turned for our process, which I think is really important. In my role as an elected representative from this village, I look at the big picture on a lot of things and the challenges that we face in the years to come. I just mentioned the policing is one issue. I'll also add that we spend about $120,000 in water buying it from Port Moody with no long-term commitment there. We need our own water. We need our own services here. I don't want to be sitting up at this table when another Anmore Green Estates happens and not having an option for them. It's pretty serious. I walk through Ravenswood on a frequent basis and I smell sewer. I also know the comments of the province are not going to be going away. And I think we all need to come to grips with it. We have one of the highest assessments in this village of anywhere in the province at over $2.5 million. We also have a pressure of a fire department that needs volunteers, and your demographic showed a big gap to where we need those volunteers to be able to provide fire protection and our health and safety. We're already seeing it happen years ahead, what's happening in Belcarra. There was a fire the other night out at Jug Island. 2 volunteers from Belcarra were able to attend, relatively in their own municipality. 8 had to come down from Anmore. So I have to look at the big picture on this. We will, as a village, never get another opportunity for a developer to service our village than now, or we'll have to pay for it ourselves at some time in the future. Traffic, I agree, is a considerable issue. I certainly do like the fact of being able to connect to Crystal Creek and some sort of plan on that, because it's something that's always really bothered me. They feel disconnected. They need to be connected. It's also important for our Public Works Department and the logistics of running this place. Environmental, I think, is key as well. I've hiked through this area for many years since I've been here, and it is an environmentally sensitive area, but I do think that we're going to really have to get the top people involved to make sure that we aren't jeopardizing, we're actually enhancing the environmental aspect of it. I can tell you many years ago, when I was sitting at this table as well, we realized that having some of this land in the public trust and having trails through it, actually, we become guardians of the environment rather than it being in private hands, which we've seen has really degraded a lot of the creeks and streams in this village. One of the things that's really important is that by moving this forward to establishing a first reading, is then all the financial for all these consultants that are going to be working for us is then borne by the proponent, which I think is key, because right now all the reports have come from the proponent, and I've got some tough questions to ask. I think one of the key things is about services. One of the things that I would like to be added in, and I know I'm probably getting ahead of myself, is that there should be a conversation with Port Moody, because again, I know that Port Moody, all their existing water and sewer lines along Ioko Road are planned for replacement. We also have Broad Thermal. That has been mothballed or is going to be dealt with fairly soon from the provincial government because it's no longer in use. That is a deep sea port that the port could grab at any point in time. Imperial Oil needs to be a player in this for the services. Belcarra, they would want to be involved, as well as, like I said previously, Anmore. We need, I believe, for the long-term viability of us, we need to have services here. But what that works out to, I'm not even at the local plan area, because I think there's a lot of these big things that need to be sorted out, and see if we can get partnerships in it, because then that reduces the costs for the proponent to bring them in. So with that being said, I think everybody has had a conversation about it. So does somebody want to move one of the motions?
Would you like me to read out the recommendation?
Sure, sure.
So the recommendation would read that an official community plan amendment bylaw based on the 2023 Icona Properties OCP amendment application be drafted and brought forth for consideration at first reading.
Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. I'll open it one more final time for any final comments.
Okay, so the way that motion reads is it starts with drafting the amendment and bringing the amendment to council. But that's not what I just heard you say, that we're going to have all this public consultation as part of this. So I think it's got to be amended to, we will start this process with public consultation or a public consultation plan, and then, lead on to this. Because the way that's worded right now, you could show up in September with the amendment already written. And then we could have an OCP, public hearing, and it could be done. Like, I understand it's not that simple, but that's a potential from those words. And I think from the public perspective, you have to choose words very carefully. And if the plan is, like, I would sit there and go, let's start with a public consultation process to lead into the OCP amendment. That makes sense to me. I think the public could buy into that. But the way it's worded now, it's very challenging.
I personally don't see it that way. I see it very much that the fact that this is actually, once we have an application on the table, we have something actually to start talking about. So that's where it's at. So any further comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to Fire Smart funding and supports problem. Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. So through the BC Growing Communities Fund grant that we received, Council identified wildfire planning as a priority. Staff recommended, and Council was supportive of that recommendation, that we first explore another funding option, which is a UBCM grant. And this recommendation is related to supporting that grant application. So the recommendation is that staff apply to the 2023 Fire Smart Community Funding and Supports Program to develop a community wildfire resiliency plan and manage the grant funding if approved.
Get someone to move that. Move, seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in, sorry. Yeah, Councillor Trowbridge.
This is a very important.
Tell him to turn his mic on. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, I'll move over to the Mayor's report. As I had said earlier, I'm very, very concerned about these RCMP costs that we're facing and what could be ahead. I also was quite concerned with, Council sent a letter just about moving forward with the new fire halls and planning to Belcarra Council. It didn't get on their agenda, and it was asked at their last meeting, and they've said that they forwarded it now over to legal, and so I'm kind of at a loss as to what that is all about, and hopefully we'll receive some comments in the near future. On July 1st, I attended which was Canada Day, I attended the Colony Farm renaming to Tlahatam Regional Park, and also that is going to be the new name of the new road that goes down to Tlahatam Regional Park. It was a great festivity. Metro Vancouver, we had a big barbecue. There was a lot of speakers. I was fortunate enough to speak, and it was a really, really good day with our new chief, Chief Giesbrook, and he's promised us that when he gets back into town, we're actually going to get together and have a good chat and talk about things. I then went to Port Moody Golden Spike Days, which was amazingly attended. It was a beautiful day, and then actually we left and then we came back later on, and they had a concert there, and it was absolutely amazing. What a great night it was. July 6th, I attended the Pork Coquitlam Croquet Tournament, which raises funds for the Poco Foundation. Another great event for local community. I'd certainly love when we get the hub going to get some sort of a foundation going here where we've got a lot of people in here, and with maybe we tweak it a little bit and do something to like bocce or something like that, and we get a foundation going that we can do some really good things for the people in our community. On July 10th, it was already commented, we had sort of an abrupt council meeting virtual due to some constraints on the building process. We had added electric charging stations and some more glazing to the new village hall. We used some of our funding that we received from some of the grants. And the reason for it was we wanted to get that done before the long weekend because we didn't want to add any extra costs from the contractor. So that was the impromptu meeting. And we are going to be providing a little bit more detail in the minutes, which I think is a good idea. On July 17th, which was just the other day, I celebrated with the Catesy First Nations for new artwork on the new Golden Ears pump station by local artist Rain Pierre from the Catesy Nation. It was amazing. So as you come across the Golden Ears Bridge towards Maple Ridge, there's a brand new pump station. That is an overflow pump station, so when sewage backs up, it doesn't go into the Fraser, it's held there and then can be treated at the new Langley wastewater treatment facility. So we're doing our best to try and get the raw sewage out of our systems and separate as many systems as we can. Last Thursday at Metro Vancouver, our $2.5 million ask was unanimously approved in the Finance Committee. There was a few little jokes because they didn't realize that they offered financing at $2.5 million, and all the other municipalities were in the 60 to 80 range, but it was approved. And then my last comment is, and I speak to Chief Sharp quite frequently, almost every other day, it's a dangerous time right now in this village, and we all need to do our part in regards to making sure that we stay safe. It is so dry. I've never seen it this dry here, and I've had property here since 2000. So please, everybody do your part. Keep an eye on, make sure kids aren't playing around. I know that, I believe as of noon today, there was a ban put on for mowing the lawns because it could possibly get sparks and that. I can tell you at Metro Vancouver, we have 4 crews ready to go at a moment's notice, and it's every day there's been something coming up. We are on pins and needles right now, people, and it is very, very dangerous out there right now. We need rain, and we just haven't had it, nor is there any on the horizon. So please be safe, enjoy the rest of your summer, and but please keep an eye on things. So I'll now open up to councillors' reports. Anybody? We'll go down one. Yeah, Councillor Richardson.
So my comment would be for all people interested, because committees typically do not get filled and it's very hard to fill them. Those are coming up. If you're interested and want to participate in your village, apply to be on the committees.
Good. Thank you. No? Okay, we'll move on to the Chief Administrative Officer's report. Ms. Elric.
Thank you. So related to what Mayor McCune was saying about the wildfires and fire ratings, Chief Sharp has elevated the fire rating, as have neighboring municipalities, to an extreme fire rating. So in addition to no fires, that also means no high-risk activities that produce sparks. So that includes use of chainsaws, tree cutting, grass cutting. There's some guidelines if you do need to mow your lawn, to wet the perimeter, that type of thing, that are all available on our website. Any of those spark activities would need to be approved by Chief Sharp along with the fire plan. So if everybody can please do their part to help out with that. Additionally, Metro Vancouver has reached out to all its member municipalities to remind people to comply with watering restrictions and also to conserve water. Their water increase has increased substantially, which likely means that people are watering lawns and such, which is not in compliance with watering restrictions. And lastly, this is our last meeting until the fall, so we will be reconvening at the beginning of September. I believe the 12th is our next scheduled meeting, and then a couple more meetings in here, and then hopefully off to our beautiful new building later this fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Few information, some general correspondence. Email from City of Prince George, Metro Vancouver Board and Brief, letter dated from Mayor Brenda Locke regarding the city policing. Now open up to public question period. 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. If you can please make it non-operational. Come on up, please. Oh. If you just name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Whitney Robinson. I'm at 2855 Sunnyside. So I'm just wondering, and I know this isn't necessarily your purview, but with the new live QR code that they're requiring at Bunsen, we're noticing a lot of people having to turn around and park in front of our house and along Sunnyside because there isn't any Wi-Fi access for people. And I know that they've added that onto the signs that people need to be mindful. But I'm wondering if there's anything council is doing or thinking about in terms of or communicating with Bunsen in terms of like a Wi-Fi hotspot or something that's going to enable people to more smoothly move into their reservations at the lake. I think when you're there already, it would be beneficial for them to have a hotspot there so that people who don't have data on their phone can just easily access it instead of having to turn people around for them to park along the street. So
yeah, we in September we have a meeting, a debrief with BC Hydro.
Okay.
You know, over the last few years, it's been dramatic.
Yeah.
It really has, and each year we've been upping it, you know, and working out the tweaks. So I certainly will take that to them, and that's really good, valuable information to have.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? You're in the you're in the batter's box.
Lisa Johnston, 180 Hemlock. I have a couple questions, if that's okay, because I'm still learning about amending OCPs. So if you can explain to me, if an OCP is changed for one parcel within Anmore, does that open up to change other areas or make it easier for the rest of Anmore to change their OCP? So no, it doesn't. Okay. Why? Like
It's a specific area.
a specific, right, but does that now make it easier for another area of Anmore to, especially if sewer is brought in? Basically, my question is going down the road of you've got people that qualify for infill, and would they not want to now maybe hold off on not going down the infill road if sewer is going to come along to their neighborhood and they have the potential to subdivide into 10 lots rather than 2 half-acre parcels? Do you know where the thinking I'm going there?
Not really.
No? No, well,
Yeah.
it's kind of a simple question.
Yeah,
Like
and I'm giving you a simple
okay.
answer. Yeah.
Okay, Kim, go ahead, sorry.
It's approving the OCP amendment within the containment boundary. So the answer to your question is no.
No, okay, okay. Comment I'd like to make is that the traffic does involve all of Anmore, not outside of Anmore, if we increase our population to 9,000 people. And I would also like to know if Anmore can use the community boards a little bit more frequently, so to post about upcoming events like this on the 2 boards that are out there, maybe. Put those to use, you know, important information that's coming up at council meetings.
Yeah.
And a last comment about the fire people. There are, as you know, numerous young people in our community aged 19 to 25 that are probably dying to become volunteer Sasamat fire people. So maybe a call out to some of these youngsters in the community and start recruiting them, because
Be awesome.
we know we have
Yeah.
some, right?
Yeah, awesome.
Thank
Yeah.
Ken Uvick, 120 Lansing Crescent. I just had a couple questions. The first one was kind of a bit of a procedural one. At the beginning of the meeting, call to order, approval of agenda, and then the public input. And I just want to preface by saying I was very appreciative of the clarifications that our CAO gave concerning that, but it was quite lengthy. And it was almost like jumping into a rebuttal against this social media boogeyman again. And I'm just wondering, do you see that as fitting into the agenda and being appropriate?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't myself. The next question is directed to Councillor Trowbridge. And you went at some length to describe the importance of public input every step along the way concerning the OCP amendment. So my question to you is, do you think that we're doing that by giving this first reading tonight in the dead of summer when everybody's on vacation and,
Ken, we're not giving it first reading tonight.
oh, pardon me.
No, all we're doing is, all we approved was to bring a first reading amendment, which will come in the fall.
Okay, my apology. I got that wrong.
Okay. It was part of the conversation that Ms. Elric read out at the beginning, yeah. So. Anything else? Okay, motion to,
I'm not on vacation.
okay, or we're going to adjourn. So.
Jurgen Dirkten, 1815A East Road. I have 3 or 4 questions. I'll try and keep them brief. So what I want to get clarified is the manager of development services who's on contract from ISIL Engineering and presenting an OCP amendment report commissioned by ISIL Engineering. Do you not see a kind of conflict here that ISIL is working on behalf of ISIL?
No, we don't.
Thank you. The other question is, what development has Icona actually built and completed that is from start to finish in the past?
I would suggest you ask them. I'm not aware of.
Okay, thank you. And also, I would just like to reiterate maybe Councillor Richardson's point about whether or not we're amending the OCP or actually rewriting it. It seems to me more like a significant departure, and I'd really like someone to maybe check the use of the word amend. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before we adjourn? Okay, motion to adjourn. Move, seconded. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Enjoy the weather. Be safe out there, and thank you again for coming tonight.